Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Holly Worton. I've been an entrepreneur since 1999, and I know firsthand how difficult it can be to build a business without the right mindset. This is a podcast for those of us who struggle with showing up in our business with confidence and authenticity, who resist taking big action because of fears and doubts, who know deep down that it's possible to create something bigger, and yet you're not. This podcast combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business more easily in a way that feels aligned. This podcast features solo shows with me and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world, including my monthly co-hosted episodes with Joe Casey. My goal is to help you grow your business more quickly and easily by transforming your mindset. For me, mindset work is a lifelong practice, and I want to help you make a habit out of mindset work. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast, episode 260. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about the importance of stretching yourself. And this is inspired by recent activities that I just experienced over the weekend. Today's Monday, the Monday before this goes live, and I've just gotten back. And I'm feeling really excited about what I achieved over the weekend. So I wanted to share this story with you and kind of expand on it and tell you how I think you can benefit from doing the same kind of thing that I just did. But before we get into this episode, I wanted to mention a podcast that I was recently a guest on. It's called Go Solo Live. So it's about women traveling solo. And I really enjoyed this podcast because I do love travel, and I love, as you know, walking alone, and I love travel alone. And it was a fun podcast to be on. It was a great conversation to have. And if you like traveling alone or not, but especially if you like traveling alone, I highly recommend that you check this podcast out. If you go to hollywharton.com/go solo, that will redirect you to the podcast itself, and you can listen to Go Solo Live. The host, Jennifer, is amazing. She's got great energy. I really enjoyed our conversation. And we talked about solo walking, we talked about mindset, we talked about travel, all kinds of good stuff. So head over to hollywharton.com/go solo, and you will be redirected to that episode. Now, hopefully I will be able to get the code to get that into my feed, so you might be able to see it here. But if you don't, that's where you can find it. Now, before I get into the meat of this episode, I also wanted to ask you, what are you reading? Is it anything good? I asked this in the Facebook group a few days ago, and it was really interesting, as always, to see what people were reading. Asked it on Twitter, didn't get a lot of responses. And I kind of was prompted to ask this question because I just finished reading The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And I really liked the book. She tells a ton of personal stories in kind of a jumbled, slightly disjointed way, but they all fit together and they're all really useful in illustrating how good, and sometimes not so good, she is at asking people for help. I mean, really, she's quite good at it, even though she tells some stories about times when she hasn't been good at it. But I think there are a lot of stories in there that are useful to creative entrepreneurs and all kinds of business owners. I think it can be really challenging for a lot of us to ask for help. I myself am included in that. I am not usually good at asking for help, and often not good at accepting help when it's offered to me. Now, I've done some mindset work on this, and I've gotten better at it, and I don't think it's a really big issue. However, I think it's something that we can all benefit from, and I really enjoyed hearing her stories and her multiple examples of how she's created such a strong community around her music and her art and the things that she creates, and how she's built those relationships over the years. She really was a pioneer in terms of creating a community around internet marketing and using Kickstarter and Patreon. And I really enjoyed this book. So it's The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. If you read it, let me know what you thought. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Really useful for all of us. So, getting into today's episode. What was this experience that I just had? I had my kickboxing summer course over the weekend. So I mentioned this in the Facebook group, and I was really hesitant to mention it because I felt like, who cares what I'm doing? Even though I do try to share stories with you about kind of what's going on in my life outside of business. But for some reason, I was kind of hesitant to post it, and yet I felt like I needed to post it. And now I think I understood why. So to give you some background on this. So I'm a brown belt in kickboxing now. And the gradings to go up from brown to brown white to brown black to black are no longer just a kind of 1 day to 2.5 hour thing. They're a 2-day full-on weekend event full of fitness and kickboxing and that kind of thing. So it's very different from what I'm used to. And I had so many fears going into this. So I was afraid because it was a big event. There were like 59 people there. It was not just my school, people who I knew. It was people from kind of our sister school. It was full on. It was 5 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday of fitness and kickboxing, which is something that my energy levels are still not fantastic. I have an underactive thyroid and I'm not as active as I would like to. And that's partly because I just don't have the energy sometimes. I get to the end of an hour's kickboxing class and I'm exhausted. So I was really, really scared of not being able to make it through this summer course, but also being the worst person there. I think I was definitely the oldest person there. Most of the people there were some children, lots of teenagers, not that many. I think there were 2 other women in their 40s. So lots of young, fit people. Like triggers these fears and these kind of scary memories I have of being in, PE in high school and being like the worst person because high school always involved ball sports and I'm terrified of flying balls, which I now know probably comes from my autism. But at the time, I just thought I was horrible at sports and horrible at physical activity and horrible at fitness and horrible at all things exercise. So it triggers those old kind of traumas from school. And I was so scared going into this thing. And, when I got the email that detailed all the stuff that we were doing, I sent it to my husband and he said, "Oh, wow, I'm just tired from looking at that." And I was looking at it thinking, how am I ever going to get through this? It's summer. The weather's really, really hot. How am I going to do this? Well, I'm so glad I did it because I did it. We started out with a really high-intensity interval training on Saturday. We went into self-defense. We did some bag work. It was really just a lot of fitness and kickboxing stuff from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., so 5 hours. Sunday, we got there. It was, again, an 8-hour thing. We started out with a run, which was supposed to go through this vineyard that's near where I live. But there was an event there, so we ended up going up Box Hill, which is this crazy steep hill where I live. And then it was just hour upon hour of kickboxing and fitness stuff. So today, my body just aches, everything hurts, I'm really tired, but I feel so good because I was so scared of this thing. And I did it. And I didn't even do it to grade. I did it because I wanted to see what the summer course was like because I'll be grading on the winter course at the end of the year. So I was just kind of there for fun, I guess. It was so intense. It was really hot. Yesterday, I think I drank like 5 liters of water. I was sweating nonstop for 8 hours. It was hard. It was very challenging. And it took me well outside my comfort zone. But I did it. I completed it. I feel so good today. I feel really, really good about it. I feel good about myself. And I feel like I stretched the boundaries of my comfort zone even more. And this is an example of physical fitness because I seem to be stretching myself in that arena quite a bit lately. But I think that anytime we stretch our comfort zone in any direction, in any way, it helps stretch our comfort zone for business as well. And sometimes it's easier to stretch ourselves in other areas of life. And then business becomes easier. And obviously I'm a big fan of doing mindset work on this stuff to make it even easier. And I did loads of mindset stuff before this last weekend because I was really scared about going. I had a lot of stuff that I was worried about, but I did it. So, summer course, super challenging. If you're in the Facebook group, I think you probably also know that I recently did a wild camping course that was actually just, I think, 2 weeks ago. And that I was really scared about. I was afraid of being the slowest person. We were going backpacking in South Wales, which I knew was a lot hillier than what I'm used to. So I was afraid of being the slowest person climbing the hills. And I was afraid of carrying a heavy backpack. And I was afraid of, just, again, basically being the slowest, most or least fit person in the group. And the reality is, I was. It was a small group. It was just the guide, this other guy, and me. And they were both kind of more used to this backpacking kind of thing than I was. But I wasn't that far behind, and it wasn't a problem, and it wasn't like I was holding them up. I was carrying a much bigger pack than I'm used to, a much heavier pack. I was going up much bigger hills than I'm used to. I was hiking for long times. Again, it was super hot, super sunny, really challenging conditions to be out physically. But I felt so good when I got back, because again, I had stretched myself. I had tackled bigger hills. I had carried weight. I had gone and done this with people that I didn't know. I had never met those two guys before. I went wild camping, which I had always wanted to do and had always kind of hesitated to do because I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what gear to bring. And I learned so much. And I came back from that weekend really feeling kind of like a new person. I almost felt like I'd kind of busted through some blocks up to a new kind of level of being, kind of peeled off some layers of fear and crap. And I really felt different on the Monday coming back from that. A couple weeks before that, I did the Way South Path, the little trail that is the topic of my next walking book, which is going to come out. Did that in 2 days instead of 3 days. It's a 35-mile trail, so totally not too bad, splitting that up into 2 days. I had always done it in 3 days, and it was perfectly fine. Splitting it up into 2 days was a big challenge. Again, the weather was really hot, really sunny. It was very, very challenging. I almost quit at one point on the second day. I was looking at the map, trying to find ways to get off the trail and get to a train station so I could get home because I just wasn't enjoying it. But then I pushed through and I completed it. And I felt really, really proud of myself because I'd stretched myself and I was tired and I had blisters and I was hot. But again, I felt really proud of myself. So pushing yourself, if you feel inclined to do so, in physical stuff and challenging yourself physically can be really, really a good way of stretching the boundaries of your comfort zone and helping you with your business. It's not like a logical step, like, well, I'm going to walk this trail and then my business will be easier. But it's like we all have fears and blocks and limiting beliefs related to business and how we run business and the things that we want to do and the goals we want to achieve. I really do believe that anything we can do to stretch the boundaries or the limits of our comfort zone will help us in all aspects of our life, including business. And now that I've told you these stories, I feel like I need to get into why do we want to stretch ourselves? Why do we want to expand our comfort zone? I mean, it's a basic personal growth concept. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume you're into personal growth because I'm probably really boring to you because that's all I talk about. But if you're into personal growth, you will benefit from stretching yourself outside of your comfort zone or stretching your comfort zone. It's going to help you be more flexible. Make different decisions, take new paths, try new things. It's going to help you to do different things. It's going to help you to take bigger actions, scarier actions. It's going to help you to do those things that previously you thought, oh, I don't know if I can do that. But you'll give it a try. You'll be more likely to give it a try because you've tried other things in the past that were scary. It'll help you to be creative because stretching the limits and stretching the boundaries of your comfort zone will help you to think outside your normal limits of thinking and be more creative and create more things and different things and new things and do things in a different way. It might help you change your prices if that's something you've been struggling with. Joanna Hennon and I just did a very recent podcast episode on pricing. Is your pricing too high? Some people's pricing is too low. I would say most people's pricing is too low. But there are a lot of things, whether you think your pricing is too high or low. It was a really, really well-received podcast episode. That's number 257. And it just came out a couple of weeks ago. So if you've been thinking about changing your prices, listen to that podcast. But also, that's a stretch outside your comfort zone. And taking these steps outside your comfort zone can also help you overcome your fears in general. Again, stretching yourself in your personal life can most definitely help you stretch yourself in your business life. And a lot of times, achieving our goals requires us to take actions outside our comfort zone. So the more you can do this, the easier it gets in all areas of your life. So thinking about business stuff, you can stretch yourself in terms of the content you create, the stories you tell. My books have all been a stretch outside my comfort zone. I have written 7 books. I'm about to release number 8 in the next month or so, and they've all been scary because I told a lot of personal stories, especially with the walking books. I shared a lot of vulnerability about the challenges that I experienced walking, particularly my first long-distance trail, the South Downs Way. It was really, really hard, and it was scary to tell that story, but I knew I had to tell it so I could help other people who were maybe thinking about doing a similar walk, but were too scared to do so. And do I have some bad reviews of that book? Yeah, I've got 2 1-star reviews that I know of. There might be more. One of them's really, really horrible. It hurt when I read it. But oh well, that's 2 bad reviews. The number of people who have written to me to tell me how much the book helped them, how much it inspired them, it's more than 2. So I feel like it's worth putting up with the 2 shitty comments or bad reviews in order to help the people that I'm here to help. Whether that's through walking stuff, outdoor stuff, nature stuff, or business mindset stuff. But it's scary to open up and tell those stories. It's scary to be vulnerable. But that's what helps us create connections, and that's why I do it. When I did that podcast with Joanna Hennon a couple months ago about the house, that was episode 253, that was really scary. And now loads of people are asking me about the house. Are there any updates? No, there are not. And I feel sometimes when I have to say, no updates. Just done the practical actions, working on the mindset stuff. And so it was vulnerable to put that out there. It was scary to put that out there. I feel like I really opened up a lot in that episode. But it was really, really useful to people. I've had really good feedback about that episode. So it can be a big step outside the comfort zone to open up and be vulnerable and tell personal stories. Same thing with my podcast episode with Joe Casey that we did about transition in business. That was 246 from last year, where I was talking about how do you tell whether you're afraid of something or you're out of alignment. And I was talking about, the changes that I wanted to happen in my business, but I wasn't really sure what they were. And that was scary to share about the messy middle. It was scary to talk about how I knew things were changing in my business, but I didn't know what that looked like. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers to my business. I don't have all the answers to my life. And it's scary to open up and tell these stories on the podcast, on the blog, in the Facebook group, or in my email list, whatever. But it's important because it shows people that I'm a real person and that I have these problems that other people have too. And I think it can be so, so valuable to learn from other people's stories, which is why I do it, even if it's uncomfortable. There was that podcast episode that I did with Shelby Forsythia about grief. And that was a scary, scary episode. It was an episode on her show, but you can find it in the feed for this show if you look back as a bonus episode. I opened up and I told a lot of my story that I hadn't put online before. And I was so scared when that episode came out. I felt sick. I almost emailed her and said, can you take it down? And of course I didn't because I felt like that would be unprofessional. And so I thought, well, just deal with it. And then obviously as time went on, I grew more comfortable with it. It's a story that's part of my life and it's part of who I am and it's part of what made me who I am today. And I think it's useful to have out there. I think it's useful for people to hear who may have experienced similar things. So one way that you can stretch yourself is by being more open, being more vulnerable with your content and the stories you tell when you write your content, when you write your blog posts or your books or you record a podcast or a video. I'm looking right now at starting to create second editions of my business mindset books because I really want to kind of dig deeper and expand them. One of the things that I didn't do as much of is, or as much as I would like to have, is tell more stories about me, tell more stories about my limiting beliefs, my fears, and how they affected me because I think people can connect with that. I've come a long way. And I talked about this in last week's episode. You have come a long way. And not only is it important to acknowledge how far we've come, but it's important to share those stories of before so that people can see how far you've come. They can see what things were like before and what things are like now for you. I think that's really, really useful. So I look forward to including more of those things in my second editions of my business books. Another way you can stretch yourself is to say yes to opportunities. So saying yes to interviews when people email you to say, will you be a guest on my podcast? Will you be a guest on my video show? Even if you've never heard of the person before. I very rarely will say no to someone who wants to interview me. I will say no to telesummits because I don't really love those. But interviews, yeah, I love doing interviews. I love speaking to new people. Yeah, it's scary. If I don't know the person, I can listen to a few episodes of their podcast, but still, I haven't connected personally with the person, so that kind of happens on the interview. And that can be scary, but it's absolutely worth doing. I know people who want to get themselves out there to new audiences, who want to be interviewed on other people's podcasts, and they don't. And sometimes people tell me, oh, it just doesn't feel aligned, it doesn't feel right. And I just think, really? Are you sure? Or is it that you're just scared? And even though you're scared, you can still say yes to these experiences. You can say yes and do the research, listen to the episodes, get all the information you need to have about this person, to have a meaningful conversation and exchange with them on the interview. But say yes to opportunities, even if they're scary. Years ago when I joined Toastmasters back in 2011, that was one of the biggest things that took me outside of my comfort zone because I was terrified of public speaking. But I was constantly putting myself forward for all the different roles that you have in a Toastmasters meeting because I wanted to force myself outside my comfort zone. And that year was a massive year of growth for me, very much in part due to Toastmasters, which I'm very, very thankful for. And if you don't know what Toastmasters is, it's a public speaking club kind of where you go and you learn how to do public speaking, both prepared speeches and impromptu speeches, and it's really well structured in the sense that everyone has really clear boundaries on how long to speak, and they really help you stay on track with timing, and it's just really, really well done. I really enjoyed it, and it was absolutely life-changing for me. So that's one way you can step outside of your comfort zone, saying yes to opportunities if people ask you to volunteer for something, or you can put yourself forward to volunteer for something that's maybe a step outside of your comfort zone. For example, the Druid organization that I belong to recently had its summer gathering at the start of June, and I was asked by 2 separate people to take part in 2 separate ceremonies. Now, I'd never been to the summer gathering or the winter gathering, and I was new. I've just started with this Druid order last December. I felt new, and I felt green, and I felt like, who am I to be participating in these ceremonies? There's one on Saturday, there's one on Sunday morning at Stonehenge, but I said yes to both, because I thought there's a reason I'm being asked to do this. And yes, it was scary because everyone else had been and taken part in these ceremonies so many times before, but I got so much more out of it from participating in it. It kind of added an extra layer to the experience and the experience of that ceremony, and particularly the sunrise ceremony at Stonehenge it was such a beautiful experience. And I'm so happy to have been asked to take part in it. I really, really enjoyed the experience. I was scared of it, but I said yes. So saying yes to opportunities when they come your way, and keeping your eyes open so that you're aware of opportunities when they come your way, because opportunities don't always present themselves as an email saying, hey, do you want to take part in this thing, yes or no? Sometimes it's conversation with someone, they're asking for help with something, and a week later you might realize, oh, that's something I could have helped them with. That kind of thing is something that you need to be aware of. Keep your eyes open to see what opportunities are coming your way for collaborations, for helping people out, for getting yourself out there. Every little bit counts. Every baby step counts. And this is the important thing about stretching yourself and expanding your comfort zone. Every baby step counts, no matter how small. You don't have to go to a 2-day summer course in kickboxing and spend 13 hours doing tons of fitness stuff. The first time I stretched myself with kickboxing was the day I showed up for the first class. I was terrified. The next time I stretched myself was when I signed up to do this it was like a local kind of fight club event thing that we did. I was a white belt still, signed up to compete. The woman that I was supposed to be fighting dropped out at the last minute. I had to fight this boy that I didn't even know. I was terrified. And I did it and I felt amazing. So like every little step counts. Every baby step counts. Every baby step counts in every area of your life. So don't feel like you have to constantly be pushing yourself only in the arena of business and anything that you do in your personal life doesn't count. That's absolutely not true. Everything you do, every step you take outside of your comfort zone to stretch yourself in any way helps you to stretch your comfort zone in business. I feel like I've said that like 15 times in different words, like over the course of the last half hour. So I hope you understood that message. And I encourage you to, right now, when this episode is over, think about one thing you could do to stretch yourself outside of your comfort zone and do something new and different. So what is something you could try new? What is something new that you could learn? What is something different that you could learn? Maybe a different way of doing things. Is there somewhere new that you could go to, travel, even if it's a new restaurant? Like anything. What is something new or different that you could do or learn or experience? Because it's all about the experiences. It's these new experiences, different experiences that scare us and stretch us outside of our comfort zone that help expand our business comfort zone. And I know that last example is kind of weird, going to a new restaurant, but maybe there's a kind of food that you always were afraid of trying. I don't know. Some people aren't very adventurous with food. So do whatever you can do to do something that maybe scares you a little bit. Maybe you've always been a little hesitant to do it. Do it. Like, write it down now. I'm sure as I've been asking these questions, something's popped into your head. Do it. Block out the time in your calendar and make it happen. Because if we want to grow as business owners, if we want to expand our business mindset, if we want to grow as people, as individuals, it is so important to keep stretching ourselves. And again, baby steps count. You don't have to jump from your comfort zone into your panic zone. On the contrary, all you need to do is just step into that stretch zone. And all the baby steps count. Everything you can do, it adds up and it changes your life in massive ways. So that's all for now. And I hope you found this episode interesting and useful. Please let me know what you thought. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me at Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram and get in touch. Also love to see you in the Facebook group. So if you head over to hollywharton.com/group, you can join me there. And thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. It would mean the world to me. Remember to visit hollywharton.com/260 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for the topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and learn more about business mindset, join my private community for entrepreneurs at hollywharton.com/group. That will redirect you to the Facebook group. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you so much.